Short-term memory can also be screwed up by interference. There are two types we're going to talk about. Retroactive interference is when new information messes up us recalling older information. Proactive is when older information messes up the recall of newer information. And this sounds backwards to me because retroactive, the definition starts with new, even though retro means backwards. And vice versa with pro. Pro should be like looking forward, but it starts with older information, messing up recall of new. So I have a way that I diagram these every single time. You cannot get these wrong if you diagram them using my method. It is foolproof. So please, on any test, don't just knee-jerk give the answer you think it is. Diagram it out. I would love to see where you've done that work so that I know if you get anything wrong, I might have an idea that you just did this diagramming step wrong. So what we need in any interference problem is older information and newer information in a scenario where we are trying to recall one of those. So in this scenario, let's say at time 1, I took a German class. In a future semester at time 2, I took a Spanish class. And then in time 3, I am taking an oral exam in a Spanish class. So I'm trying to retrieve Spanish that I learned at time 2. When I do that, German words pop out instead. So which type of interference is this? Proactive or retroactive? And now I'm going to show you what you need to diagram in order to get this right. You may already know, but I want you to practice the diagramming so that you cannot screw this up. What to identify? We first start with which is the knowledge that's getting interfered with. Which one's getting messed up? That's the one I'm wanting to retrieve, but something else comes out of my mouth instead, okay? And then we need to figure out, step 2, what's the interfering knowledge? Which is the knowledge that's coming out of my mouth instead of the one I wanted to say? The interfering knowledge is the one we want to hone in on and label. And I'm going to label it with an X on this diagram coming up here in a second. Then we ask ourselves, which direction is it moving when it is interfering? If it's moving forward, we call it proactive. If it's moving backwards, retroactive. And you're like, your information isn't moving. I don't understand what you mean. Well, let me show you on this diagram. Remember at time 1, I took a German class. Time 2, I took a Spanish class. And then I'm trying to retrieve Spanish, but I end up speaking German instead. So let me draw to diagram this out. So first, I need to find the one that is being interfered with. That's the one I'm trying to retrieve. So that is Spanish. I'm trying to retrieve Spanish, okay? And that was what I had at time 2. And that was what I learned at time 2. But the one I actually want to focus on and diagram is the one that is doing the interfering. German came out of my mouth instead, even though that's not what I wanted. So I'm going to put an X at time 1 where I learned German in the past. And which information is it interfering with? I'm going to draw an arrow from it to the one it's screwing up. It is screwing up my Spanish knowledge. It's interfering with my Spanish. So, and then now that I have drawn it out, I just ask myself, which direction is that moving? Well, if time is moving from left to right, this German is moving into the future to interfere with my Spanish. If it's moving forward, it is proactive. My German knowledge is proactively interfering with my retrieval of my Spanish knowledge. And so next we're going to look at another example just to make sure we get this diagramming process down pat. Let's imagine that at time 1 is when I memorized my office phone number. At time 2 is when I memorized my newer Google Voice phone number. At time 3, imagine that I'm back on campus and I'm having some phone problems and I contact campus IT. I have to tell them my office phone number. Instead, what I end up typing into the email is my Google Voice phone number. Which type of interference is this? Okay, first, I want to identify the information that's being interfered with. That's the one I'm trying to retrieve. I am trying to give them my office phone number. Now I'm going to put that aside a little bit. Which is the one doing the interfering? That is my Google Voice phone number is what came out instead. That's not what I wanted to do, but that's what I retrieved when I was looking in my mind for my office phone number. So Google Voice is our offender here. When did I learn Google Voice? That was at time 2. So I'm going to put an X on time 2 to show when I learned the interfering information. And what is it interfering with? My office phone number, which I learned before it, which was in the past at time 1. And so which direction is my arrow pointing? If time is moving from left to right, this is going right to left, which means it's moving backward in time. So my Google Voice phone number is moving backward in time to interfere with my retrieval of information I learned before that, which was my office phone number. So this is retroactive interference. Retro is when we are looking back into the past. Like this shirt that I got from a vintage shop is very retro, right? Because it is a 70s style. It's looking back into the past. So that's what's happening with our phone numbers here. My Google Voice phone number is retroactively reaching back into the past to interfere with my knowledge of my office phone number. So anytime you have an interference example, I need you to diagram it in this way. If you don't, you run a huge, huge risk of getting it wrong because humans really suck at reversing a statement in our minds. We really, that's an extra step we can mess up when we're taking a test. And this is why I never put questions on my test that say, which of these is not a limitation of short-term memory? I never use not because that does not test your knowledge of short-term memory. What it tests instead is your ability to flip that around. Because at first you're going to read that as which of these is a limitation of short-term memory, and then you have to reverse that. Humans are so bad at negation, so bad at it that it took us thousands and thousands of years to ever invent the idea of a zero or negative numbers, okay? So your brain's just not built for it. I'm not going to ask you to reverse statements. I'm going to ask you to diagram this stuff so that you can't get tripped up based on those very human cognitive limitations.